This Labour government claim they've increased deportations, but all they've done is to send away visa overstayers, and those who are happy to voluntarily return, we will appoint, we will demand, this government does the same, that there is a minister for deportations. Somebody somewhere in government needs to be held accountable. Today I wanted to talk about an issue that you may all think is a national issue and one that perhaps doesn't impact on the May the 1st elections, but you would be wrong. Indeed, the population explosion that has happened in this country has had a bigger effect on the lives of more people than any other single issue. And it's interesting because up until 1997, this wasn't even a political debate. Indeed, when I was first elected to the European Parliament in 1999, immigration didn't appear in my election literature or our manifesto at all. And that's because simply, from Windrush right up until Mr. Blair became Prime Minister, net migration into Britain had run at an average of 30 to 50,000 people a year, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. It wasn't even a debate in successive general elections. But the Labour Party under Blair decided that diversity was a good thing, something that was never ever to be questioned, and that mass immigration would be good for the economy, would make us all better off, and frankly, anybody that dared to even question this up until at least 2010 was considered completely and utterly beyond the pale. The worst of the worst. And I know this because I first started speaking out about open borders in 2004, when it became pretty obvious to me that opening up the door to 8 and then 10 former communist countries, some of whom had an economy that were only the 7th the size of ours, would lead to a huge inflow of people. Although at least in those days, people that came did actually work. That sadly has now all changed. And since then, in every single general election, we have been made a series of promises that frankly amount to little more than a pack of lies. The public being told what the parties think the public want to hear. In fact, know from polling what the public want to hear without any intention of delivering on it at all. Of course, the Conservatives, far worse than Tony Blair, net migration to tens of thousands promised in 2010, 2015, 2017 and then 2019. We were told substantially lower numbers. We now have a Labour government who've promised they will radically bring down the numbers coming into Britain, and we'll find out in June when we get the first ONS data whether that's true, although I very much doubt it. We've been told by successive Prime Ministers they would stop the boats, even that they would smash the gangs. Well, I'm afraid none of it has come true. And I think it's about time we looked at the true cost of the population explosion to this country. And I want to make this point very clear, that recent polling, particularly polling that was published last week in the Sun newspaper, which was the whole of the Midlands and the North, showed that we are now by far the most trusted party on this issue, and that I am by far the most trusted leader to do something about it. It'll be good for the economy, is what we were told. Well, 30 years ago, 7% of the workforce were foreign-born. Today, 21% of the workforce are foreign-born. That has directly led to a pay cut, on average, of about 3% per worker, which of course doesn't really mean very much if you're earning big money, but if you're earning £20,000 a year, it does mean quite a lot. And interestingly, the Bank of England in 2015 produced a report showing a direct link between numbers of foreign-born workers and wage suppression, yet the whole thing was completely and utterly covered up. The impact, of course, on wages is worse than that, given that there are 500,000, 700,000, who knows, people working in the illegal economy, leading to further wage suppression. The greatest myth, of course, is that it will be good for us, and you must stop moaning about it, because everybody that is here has come to work. Well, try this statistic for size. Foreign-born workers are 40% higher likely to be unemployed than British-born workers. 40% higher for foreign-born people to be on the unemployment register. It's not a statistic I'd ever heard before. It's pretty mind-blowing. And even the argument that, look, most people come here to work, so what is there to complain about? Well, I'm afraid that doesn't work either, because in the last 6 years, net 3 million people have settled in Britain from outside of Europe, and of those, only 16% came on work visas. It's a completely mind-blowing number. Now, it's true to say that many of those who've come perhaps will enter the workforce, but you begin to understand that the argument for mass migration, that it's needed for the labour market, actually isn't true, where the majority that come as dependents. The Centre for Migration Studies recently published that since 2020, unemployment benefits to foreign-born people have been £36 billion. We are talking simply about eye-watering numbers. The other statistic that I was surprised by was that low-paid migrants on average cost the taxpayer £150,000 by the time they reach retirement, let alone what that will be afterwards. So let us be clear. Non-selective, in many cases non-working, mass migration into Britain has made everybody in this country poorer, except, of course, for big employers who love as much cheap migrant foreign labour as they can possibly get their hands on, as the argument grows every year that British people simply won't do those jobs. But we're told it's okay, because we're growing, we're getting richer. Gross domestic product is going up, and that's the only measure that anybody on the two front benches in Parliament will ever talk about. I did try the other day with Rachel Reeves, and she's trying too, but I did try to make the argument that actually GDP in gross figures doesn't mean very much when you have a population that's rising by 750,000 or 1 million every year directly as a result of open borders. Why not look at GDP per capita? But no, nobody wants to engage with that. Well, the last 2 years have seen record levels of migration into Britain, and GDP per capita has fallen in 6 of the last 8 quarters. We are getting poorer as a result of policies started by the Labour Party, accelerated by the Conservative Party, and now being continued by Labour. None of which, of course, means that we in this country don't want high-skilled, law-abiding people to come into Britain, to work, pay taxes, add to our society. All of those things are good. But we have to discriminate. Yes, that's the word I'm going to use. It means choose. We have to discriminate in terms of who comes into our country and in what numbers. To try and have a rational debate about housing is virtually impossible. I've been trying for over 10 years to engage other party leaders in a rational debate about the terrible housing shortage, the cost of housing and rents in this country. Nobody will engage with me. Of the house price rises that we've had over the last 2 decades, 25% of that is directly down to immigration and the rising population. Indeed, even the Ministry of Housing themselves said in 2018, again suppressed, not publicised, that a 1% increase in the number of households leads to a 2% increase in cost. And just think on this, there were 23.7 million households when Mr Blair came to power. There are now 28.5 million households. Net migration has increased the population by 10 million in the last 20 years. And the same goes for rent. Even in recent years, a third of rent rises since 2020 are directly down to rising population, which means for the average renter, another £1,000 a year. And think on this. This government is determined to build 1.5 million new homes in the lifetime of this Parliament, just as the government before was committed to the same figure. That will not have any impact on the housing crisis in Britain in any way at all. We currently have to build a new house every 2 minutes. Yes, that's right. We have to build one new house every 2 minutes just to cope with levels of net migration into Britain. not dealing at all with the backlog that we built up. This Labour government claim they've increased deportations, but all they've done is to send away visa overstayers and those who are happy to voluntarily return, often with £3,000 in their pocket. We will demand, this government does the same, that there is a minister for deportations. It will be part of the Home Office, but it'll be a separate department within it. We will need to recruit new people, as much of the evidence is that those that currently work in the Home Office would willfully obstruct policy if we won the next general election. But somebody somewhere in government needs to be held accountable. And you know, you've only got to go back 20 years to the last Labour government, and they were deporting tens of thousands of people a year who were here illegally. When Blunkett was Home Secretary, if you came illegally, you know, you didn't touch the sides. You were sent back. So what I'm calling for isn't actually anything particularly radical. It's actually just common sense. It's what most countries in the world do. You want to go and live there, you want to go and settle there, you have to meet a set of criteria. And that country chooses, are you the right person or are you not? I know the problem is huge, because there are an estimated 1.2 million people here illegally. And going beyond the last couple of 100,000 is not going to be an easy job. It's going to be one hell of a battle, and we know that the state and the apparatus of state will fight us at every point. But it is our intention, ultimately, that if you've come illegally, you should not be able to stay. You should not be able to make a spurious claim that somehow your right to a family life means you should stay here. We will, in 3 to 4 weeks' time, announce more detailed policy on how we will actually carry out those deportations. We'll do that after the election, but I make the intention very, very clear here today. We will bring a total end to all asylum claims from people who've come here on travel visas or who are overseas students. We will demand the deportation of all foreign criminals. And for those who come to Britain and who are granted citizenship, that will be regarded as a legally binding contract, just as it is in Australia and elsewhere. We welcome you in if you make those pledges to us, but you actually have to obey the law and be somebody who is a positive benefit to our country. We are a party who are very proud of the fact we had more votes in the general election from the ethnic minority vote than the Liberal Democrats did. And an increasing number of people from all communities want to stand for our party. These are people who came to Britain, or their parents came to Britain, because they wanted to be part of this great country. They wanted to become a success in this great country. So try as anyone might to twist anything I've said today. All I've given you are hard facts. All I've laid out are sensible policies that will stop illegal immigration into Britain and stop the population explosion, which is damaging the quality of life for so many countless millions. Thank you very much indeed.